bagpipes mean one thing and one thing only. It's time for DERFCAST, episode number 48, recorded here at the studios in beautiful Sunset District of San Francisco, California. And I am joined here by my new security guard, Max, and Pipes the cat is now the engineer. Why? Because Pipes has been catching birds right and left. Caught a bird on Roddy Piper's 1-year anniversary of his passing, so that made me switch. And Max the cat, he's asleep at the door, and whoever comes in will trip over him, and that's why he's the security guard. You can catch past episodes of DERFCAST, type all capitals DERFCAST, on SoundCloud.com, or go to Ralph Tycho's Comfortably Zoned Radio Network on iTunes. That's right, DERFCAST is now on iTunes. And I'd like to thank last guest on DERFCAST, Keith Elliott Greenberg, whose production of Behind Closed Doors, the Robin Williams story with yours truly in it and a couple snippets, is now on the Reels Network, REELZ, and it's a 2-hour show, and it really does good about the passing of Robin and the story of his rocket to stardom and all of that. But anyway, I am blessed today by one of my favorite guests, if not my favorite guest. He's such a favorite guest of mine, he has his own theme music. And here it goes. Yes. Let's welcome back Mr. Vandal Drummond to DERFCAST. Vandal, are you there?
I am here, and I am happy to be here.
And I'm happy to have you. Welcome back. And it's been a while since you've been on the show, and how you doing?
I am doing really well since we last talked. Elena and I had our trip to Europe and got to see London, Ireland, Scotland. We fell in love with Scotland, especially Edinburgh, and good to be home. It's good to be back on the podcast here. I know before we went on air, we were talking about how long it's been. It's been quite a while, and it's good to be back talking with you. And
thank you. It's great to have you on. You were on DERFCAST 43, and we're at DERFCAST 48, and I've been a little lazy lately not putting them out, but I'm going to start churning them out, and I'm just excited to have you back on. I always enjoy you, and tell me when to stop kissing your ass, and I will.
I never get tired of it. Flattery will get you everywhere.
So did you have a good...
I love this podcast. This is one of my favorites.
Thank you. It's a hole-in-the-wall podcast. It's not that well known, but I do it for the love of just old-school wrestling, which you're a big part of. And you are the Lucha part of my podcast. You've taught me everything I know about Lucha.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You have.
I must say, I have been spending a lot of time since before Elena and I went on our trip at the end of June. I've been trying to do a lot of research. I can't remember if I brought this up in the last podcast, but I am obsessed with this newspapers.com website that has an archive of over 3,000 newspapers, some going back to the 1700s.
Yes, you did mention that, and you are researching diligently anything about Lucha in the 20s and 30s, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, that's right, and also Mexican wrestlers who are active here in the United States, or Mexican-American wrestlers. And, the one that I'm finding lots of results and just little bits of info on is Jimmy El Pulpo, who was, pretty much forgotten today, but with a huge draw in California. So was Vincent Lopez. I haven't looked into him much, but the other two that I'm trying to do research on is one you know well, Black Gordman, and
oh, love him.
Oh, yeah. And the other is Francisco Aguayo. And just to show you how wonderful my wife Helena is, it was 3 days before we were about to leave for our trip. And I had amassed a lot of information on Francisco Aguayo, who was the first really huge box office heavyweight star in Mexico in the mid-30s under the name Charo Aguayo. And I had amassed a lot of information, enough to write an article, and I knew that if we went on this vacation and I didn't get it written, it was going to be in the back of my mind, and I said, but that means I'm going to have to burn the midnight oil at least a couple of nights while getting ready for the trip.
Right.
And she actually backed me on it, and, you know, she knew it wasn't for anything monetary or there was no deadline. Just the deadline was in my mind. And if anybody out there checks out luchaworld.com website, my friend Alfredo Esparza's website, just toward the end of June, and the title of my story is A Charo by Any Other Name. And the reason that I just got so wrapped up in Francisco Aguayo is when I started actually trying to study Lucha history in the late 80s, which was difficult with no internet at the time, and it was, you could find stuff about Latin American stars on microfilm here in the States, but finding good solid stuff from Mexico. But I came across his name frequently, and you know, the two bits of information that I found interesting was he first became famous under the name Pete Brown in Texas, Cactus Pete Brown. And then there was never much detailed information about his life and career, but they hailed him as one of the most important wrestlers in Mexican history. And the interesting thing, ever since I first heard about him in 1989, was that, you know, he was a star in Texas. He's a huge star in Mexico. He died in 1963 in Memphis, Tennessee. And every now and then, I would just ask somebody, Memphis, Tennessee, what was he doing in Memphis, Tennessee? And everybody says, I don't know, maybe he was doing something with Nick Goulas. And so I would Google, once the internet came around, and I asked a lot of people who knew Lucha really well, and all of them just, like me, said, no, we really don't know why he was in Memphis. So
gotcha.
I started, I remember the last person I asked was Matt Farmer, who was an awesome wrestling historian up in the Northwest. Really neat guy, and just the research he does is just stunning. And that was when I said, okay, all these really awesome historians shrug at Memphis, and he says, I have no idea, but I'm curious. And I could find no mention anywhere of Francisco Aguayo, and then, boom, I finally come across a clipping, not a clipping, an article, says, former wrestler Francisco Aguayo passes away, and it was in a newspaper called The Tennessean.
Gotcha.
And so it has a picture of him. I'm saying, that's interesting. And then as I started reading, it said Francisco Aguayo, who appeared as both a wrestler and a referee here for the last 20 years under the name Don Cortez, passed away. And I was just struck by how here's this guy who was a huge star, and for some reason, sounds like he chose to kind of stay involved in the business, but kind of downgraded himself, kind of took himself out of the limelight. I mean, he was a name there.
Right,
and
right.
It's funny because I had seen the name Don Cortez in Tennessee clippings and results before, but I had no idea who that was.
Well, was there gambling involved or Mexican gangsters? No racistness intended, but was he forced out of Mexico and loved the business so much?
Well, here's the other thing that was equally surprising was he was much more involved in the American wrestling scene than he was in the Mexican wrestling scene. He was a huge star in both Texas and New Mexico, and to some extent here in Arizona and California. Did I say here in Arizona? I meant here in California and Arizona. I don't know what it. Well, I don't think it was like an escape because it wasn't a secret who he was. Oh. At the same time, it was.
Right. I get what you're saying. Well, now you said his name in Mexico was Aguayo.
Yeah. What they did was it's debatable whether he was born here in America or was born. Well, actually, I think he was born in Mexico, but it was debated whether he was raised in America or Mexico. And why he did the name Cactus Pete Brown, I wasn't able to find the reason, but I suspect that a promoter probably was using the name Pete Brown because there was a really famous middleweight wrestler named Pet Brown. Oh. And how promoters do that. They'll do a little tweak on the name to try to confuse people. Back in those days, pre-internet. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I came across a clipping about a promoter trying to push a wrestler named Frank Goffenschmidt. Jeez. I found really amusing. That's funny. Well, my question, if he left Mexico, gave up their Aguayo name, did Pedro Aguayo Sr. take the name? No, Aguayo actually is a really common name, so that's a sheer coincidence. I'm certain Carol Aguayo was happy his name was Aguayo because people would associate him, but that's a sheer coincidence. Gotcha. Well, that brings up my other, look, remember, I know maybe 1/10 of 1% of what you know about Lucha, so my only educated question would be, a lot of people are saying that Rey Mysterio killed Pedro Aguayo Jr., which is not true. That's so horrible that people have been saying that. And every time I see it printed on the wrestling sites, I go right on and say, wrong, watch the film, even though it's a horrible film. He had what happened to him happen before Ray even touched him. Exactly. It was similar to Masawa's death. It was a freak thing. Right. And that's, dude was a talented, both of them are really talented workers. And, it's terrible that people are printing stuff. I couldn't believe it when and one guy printed it, then another one on 3 different sites. And on 3 different sites, I said, go watch the film. It's still on YouTube. You can find it. He had his affliction or whatever happened before Ray even touched him. Please don't say that about Ray. It's not right. And something Fredo brought up that I think might be the case is, we wonder if, like Masawa, he just had so much damage and just a bump that otherwise might hurt him a little actually was the straw that breaks the camel's back. Exactly. That's basically what happened with Masawa. Masawa, as I recall, took a suplex that he had taken hundreds of times, but the body just couldn't take anymore. And it was a total freak thing. And it's rare I get up and defend a promoter. But I was really livid when they reported that where they emphasized how long it took them to get out of the ring and how they kind of, they didn't do a formal stretcher. It was kind of haphazard, but what they leave out is, one, initially, they just thought he got knocked out. That does happen. Right, well, yeah. And since 2 other wrestlers suffered injuries bad enough where they had to go to the hospital. And I don't know of many promotions that even have one ambulance at the show. Maybe a doctor, but
let alone 2. Wow.
Yeah, and when you read about Mysterio and Conan and their wives in the hospital, just hoping that he lives, and just think of what they went through. I mean,
my God, it's horrible. We'll follow Mysterio because of the internet and the film of it and everything. Maybe that's why WWE hasn't brought him back yet. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's pure speculation on my part.
Yeah.
But,
no, I think it's more just issues. From what I heard, Mysterio is frustrated with just dealings with WWE. I only met him a handful of times when he was really young. You couldn't meet a nicer guy. And from everybody I know years later will tell you he is a genuinely good guy, but he knows how to come to the bargaining table. I think if WWE was to cut a deal he liked, he'd go back. I bet they'd want him back. But he's a shrewd businessman, and that's a good thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, no one else is going to be an advocate for him. He might as well be for himself,
Exactly. Every time I had met him, he was just nothing but nice, and I was tickled when I briefly worked with Ron Scholar in the AAA shows in L.A. I had not seen him in maybe 3 years, and I looked a lot different. My hair was a lot longer. And,
right,
And he comes into the arena and he says, "Oh, my God, I haven't seen you in a long time." I'm like, "Do you remember who I am?"
Oh, that made you feel good. Well, you're a good guy. I mean...
Oh, well, thank you.
You are, Vandal. I'm talking to Vandal Drummond here on DERFCAST number 48. And there we go. I just have to do that for my sponsors. And my sponsors are my cats, Max and Pipes. And there we go. Okay, I'm taking care of that.
Their sponsors.
Yeah.
Felines rock.
That they sure do.
To conclude, I would spend more time on the Guayo story. But anybody who has interest in both Memphis and Lucha history, if you go to the site and look, it was Fredo put it up around the end of June, and anybody want to give me feedback or anything they might know about this EPCAT, please let me know, because even though I finished the story and I feel really good about writing it, I consider it a work in progress. I want to learn more about this guy. He's a pioneer who I think deserves more of a detailed biography. Well,
I only probably have about 20 dedicated listeners, but definitely if they have any information, they could email us here at DERFCAST at DERFROD@Comcast.net. But I admire your tenacity, because you're probably the only one that's ever done research on that man, maybe outside of his relatives or distant relatives now that there is an internet.
And I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised, because there's a lot of stars in Mexico that people have done some really good research on. And I don't know. It sounds like there's a lot of respect for him, but I'm curious why there hasn't been a lot more just digging into, because it sounds like he had a very fascinating life.
Well, maybe you've uncovered something that needs more people to hear about, which is you're the man to get the information out, Vandal. You're on so many podcasts.
Thank you.
And that's where I first learned of you, was on a podcast. I don't remember which one it was. Excuse me, I'm old. And
don't worry, I'm with you. I'm there. We're old, and we both have chemo brain.
Yes, we do.
I was so thankful to learn there was such a thing, because I thought I was getting older faster. But
I was so proud of myself before I got the lymphoma. I partied very heavy until I was 32. Coke, pot, speed, quit everything. I haven't had anything of that nature since I was 32 years old. I'm now 57. So let's backtrack 3 years ago. I was bragging to people, hey, I can remember a full phone number and zip code, and area code, right? I can remember it now, and it was a big thing for me. Well, after everything's said and done, I'm cancer-free, thank God. My short-term memory's back to where it was when I was smoking dope. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah, and I was weirded out. I thought, wait, I can't be getting old this fast. And my dear friends at work, Adiala and Letitia, who just happened to also go through chemo, just both of them in the last few years, they mentioned chemo brain. I go, oh, what's that? And when they told me, I gave them big hugs and said, thank you for letting me know it's not just me.
It's not the same type of memory loss, like, oh, geez, I can't remember. It's the type of memory loss for me anyway, Vandal, where I have to sit and think for a couple seconds, and then it comes right to me.
Yes, it's like you have to put effort into thinking.
Yes.
I found for me, and I don't do this enough, but if something interesting comes in my head and it dawns on me that I'm going to have to strain to think it, if I write it down where there's a piece of trivia or just something new I learned, it's like it sticks a little easier for some reason.
Right. That's what I do. I have a paper and pencil. Since I talked to you last, I think I mentioned to you I was going to be working for the San Francisco Giants.
Yes.
That has worked out amazing. That is
I'm so glad to hear that.
Oh, I love it. The pay is horrible. After taxes, take home is $9.96 an hour, which is the lowest I've made since I was a teenager or a little bit after. But that's okay. It's part-time.
You're employed, and that's...
Yes, yeah. Along with my pool cleaning business, I scrape by, and I mean scrape by. But, now you caught up with me about that. And back to the Aguayos, he was a lot like, if I would say Abdullah the Butcher, Carlos Colon, King Curtis, the Sheik, and say Pedro Aguayo Sr., you'd know where I'm coming from. Because of every picture I ever saw of the gentleman, it was like, my God, him and King Curtis' foreheads are related.
Absolutely, and in fact, for one of the huge shows at Cuatro Camino in 82 or 81, I can't remember which, Aguayo and Abdullah teamed.
Wow.
And if you Google it, if you Google the names, I think you'll come up with a very endearing picture of Pero Aguayo with Abdul the Butcher, and in between them is like a little 2-year-old Pero Aguayo Jr.
Oh, I'll have to look for that. It's
an adorable picture.
Oh, my God. Now, are they both bloody messes, or was it before the match?
It was before the match.
Gotcha. Well, I got such old school in my head because for once, and I usually don't promote this promotion, the WWE Network put some hidden gems up. And it's like the Internet's not alive or kicking about it, but there is a lot of people posting about the Tommy Rich, Buzz Sawyer last Battle of Atlanta.
That is the talk of the Internet today. I mean, it's last week, actually.
Right. And it's
amazing.
on. It is on, and it's really good. And, it's nothing like they do now. Even the Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton match doesn't even measure up, to the cage match, because it's old school. Let's hit our opponent's head against the cage 20 times.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There's also that other streaming site that shows old NWA stuff.
Right, yeah, I haven't subscribed to that, and that has a lot of the old NWA.
And the one specifically that I heard Brian Last and Dave and Dixon Span talk about is that apparently they have a late 60s match featuring Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine.
Ooh!
I don't know why I haven't just automatically subscribed to that station.
My God, that's worth going to the trial subscription period just for that match and saying goodbye afterwards.
Absolutely.
Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine. Now, what was Valentine's moniker that he always used to say? I may not be able to make them think it's real, but I'll make them remember me or something like that.
But I'll make them think I'm real.
Yeah. Oh.
And Bull Curry, I don't think he ever said that particular thing, but Bull Curry was, he wasn't as out there as Valentine.
No, but...
well, because Valentine was obviously a very tough guy and loved to work a really believable style.
Right.
He loved to work stiff. That's probably putting it mildly. But he was kind of, outside of wrestling, sounds like he was kind of a wild man. Not to the point of Dr. Jerry Graham, but pretty wild.
Right.
Bull Curry was very wild and could really handle himself, but everybody I talked to who knew him, Tom Burke was a very close friend of him, just said you'd never meet a kinder individual. And my favorite Bull Curry story I heard, I have to find this tape somewhere, and poor Fredo, I always have him take my old tapes and put them onto DVD. But he's busy doing so much stuff. But there was a Cauliflower Alley where in the mid-90s, where Alex Knight, God bless him, brought the Doc to Cauliflower Alley when Doc was in a wheelchair after breaking his leg. It was kind of the beginning of the last downhill for him. But it was a wonderful night because he had a coffee cup and was sipping and sipping. Although it was brandy or whiskey he was sipping, not coffee.
Right.
And somebody had a camera. This was before the days when you could just videotape something on a phone, but somebody had a camcorder there. And so Tom Burke just asked the guy, hey, if I interview the Doc, would you tape it? And goes, sure. And so Doc is being interviewed by Tom Burke. I got to find it because it's a very endearing interview too.
Right.
But they're talking about Bull Curry. They talked about an incident where Jack Dempsey was a special referee, and I can't remember what happened, but Dempsey got smart with Bull Curry. I don't know if it was in the ring or in the dressing room. I want to say the dressing room, and Bull Curry just nailed him with the chair and just laid him out. But the story I'd never heard was, I don't know if you've heard of the old shooter named Ike Eakins.
No, I haven't.
He was considered one of the top-level shooters from, the 40s up until his death. I want to say in the 60s. He was one of those guys who probably stayed a little too long in the business and died of heart attack in the ring. But he was one of those shooters that other shooters probably would want to avoid messing with, but also apparently a bully. And Doc was telling Bert that I guess Eakins hurt a rookie, not career-ending, but really went too far, not just stretched him, really hurt him. And when he got back in the dressing room, I guess Bull Curry just was staring at him, and Bull Curry was in his street clothes.
Right.
And he is reaching into his pocket, and they said, apparently Ike Eakins just practically had an anxiety attack right there and just begged Bull Curry, don't do anything, please. And he said, he begged Bull off, and he said the reason is because I guess Bull Curry had a knife, not a pen knife, a knife, and was going to take him out. But the way the doc said it was best. He said he begged him off because Bull was going to cut his heart out.
Wow.
And it just two people who are getting a bit of a renaissance for fans of history are Bull Curry and Chris Colt, thanks to Brian Last's 605 podcast. And I'm happy about that because I was a huge Chris Colt fan. And
oh, my God. Yeah, he was here for a while for Roy Dyer.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that well.
And Portland. He was in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And Mickey Doyle talks a lot about him. I think, didn't Mickey Doyle team with him? Sure he did. Yes, he did.
He must have because Mickey was totally based in California all around that time.
Yeah, so, people who are listening to my podcast, I hope at least maybe two of them know who Bull Curry was. He had huge eyebrows. He was like, picture CM Punk without tattoos, and you kind of have Bull Curry with huge eyebrows, not much of a build, but a wild man, that type of body. Just a wild man, was hardcore. Him and the Sheik had tons of matches in Detroit. Sheik used him regularly.
Yes, and he was kind of like, I want to start watching his matches, because I heard he's one of those guys where you're watching him and you're thinking, damn, this guy means business. Like, I don't want to get him mad. Even though he passed away in '84, I still wouldn't want to get him mad.
I mean...
yeah, and that's one of the guys, there's not too many guys, but when he passed away, Tom Berg had written Jerry the doc a letter about him. And when I talked to when I talked to the doc, it was one of those rare times where Doc just sounded just very, very sad, like, God, what a wonderful guy he was, you know.
Oh, I bet, one of my all-time favorite three-man, if there was ever three men to throw in the ring, it'd be, God, I'm blanking again, Bull, the Sheik, and Macho Man, all three in the ring at the same time.
Could you imagine them? Oh, that would be awesome.
Maybe throw in Bulldog Brower, or, there's another wrestler that he never gets credit. I don't know, Vandal. People just don't talk about Bulldog. I mean, there was a guy that practically reinvented himself when he got older, when he went into the IWA, became its champion, and generated heat like crazy.
Yeah, he was a hell of a heel. He was like, he was fascinating. He might have turned some people off because he, late in life, joined the KKK, I think, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what the story is, but he actually appeared on some Jerry Springer-like show or something like that. So
no. Well,
I don't know if it was a work thing, but if it was not a good idea. It was a very bad.
Oh, my God. Well, two wrestlers I've always wanted to see wrestle, I don't know if it ever happened, maybe you know or Rock Rim knows, is Bull Curry against Pampero Firpo.
Ooh, I don't know if they have or not.
I mean, Firpo...
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Firpo's another wrestler. Now, did you ever see... You had to see him wrestle live or be in the same...
I only saw him wrestle live once in San Bernardino, kind of toward the end of his career when he did a heel run in 1980. And there's if you go to YouTube, somewhere there is an interview that Bill Apter does with him on Skype. I think it's about 5 years old.
Right.
Bull Curry, I'm going dyslexic tonight.
No, it's okay. We both are. I know the interview you're talking about. And,
it's the first person I sent it to was my brother-in-law because he was a huge Firpo fan when he was a little kid. And, we've heard so many stories about our heroes going through bad times or, committing terrible acts. And it was really nice to see this guy in his mid-80s who had a good career and is just content, just living modestly, but
well, he was
spending his days with his family, with his grandkids.
Right, exactly.
It's really nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's, spending his golden years with his daughter, his grandkids, his family, and his daughter supports his wrestling, leaves the room when he has when he does his infrequent interviews, and, he was he's so happy in that interview. I know the exact one you're talking about. But,
yeah, he's one guy I probably never will get the chance to meet, but I'd just love to meet him and just...
You never know.
Just give him a bow. I'd just love to just say we're awesome.
I'm sure if you wrote him a letter, being a wrestler yourself and not, a mark by any means, he'd make time for you. I mean,
I guess it's a possibility.
Jesus, we're running up on the, 36 minutes. So I know you want to leave in 45. So to shift the subject a little bit, I just saw I went to the Kurt White promotion here in Fremont, city outside of Fremont. Anyway, it don't matter. Right in Fremont, basically. And I was amazed at Teddy Hart, his match. He did some moves, Vandal, I've never seen. And it's a shame he's not in the cruiserweight division of WWE, because he'd kick ass.
He is great. The first time I ever saw him was remember when TNA didn't have TV, but just would have a weekly Friday night pay-per-view?
Right, that they were selling for $5 or $4.99.
I went through a streak where I was buying those, and one night he was just on the show. I don't think it was announced or anything. I said, this should be interesting. And my jaw hit the floor. The moves he was doing, and it's not just the moves, he was doing these complex high spots as if the way you and I would get up to go for a walk. He looked like he was born to do it. It's a shame. The negative side is I heard he's a nice guy, but he shoots himself in the foot a lot when he gets hooked up with a promotion. In fact, Meltzer probably put it best. Meltzer was referring to a recent match he saw of Teddy Hart and just said, someday if there was a book talking about wrestlers who had all the talent but didn't make it, he said he would be the lead story because he is so talented.
Oh, shit!
But just gets himself into fixes.
Exactly. I mean, his moves, which you could tell, what you told me earlier about him too, when you went to see him wrestle. A lot of his high spots, he lands on his feet, and definitely, when you told me he broke his ankle in 2 places, I could see him probably from a corner move, flipping in the air. I mean, nothing like Neville or whatever the guy's name is in WWE. Just a move I've never seen, And he did it twice in this match against the ex-TNA guy, Joey Gow, I forgot his name. But it stole the card. It was the best match. And afterwards, I asked him where his cat was, because there was a meet and greet, which was free. He was selling his stuff. And he said, they're in the car with the windows open and the air conditioning on.
That's awesome. I know. That was my biggest disappointment. I wanted to get a photo op with Teddy and his cat. That's what I went there for. And I gotta give credit not just to Teddy Hart, but the promoter Kerry, IPW promoter here. He still flew Teddy Hart out here, and Teddy Hart came just to come in, make an appearance, and tell the fans, I'm very sorry that I can't wrestle tonight. Thank you for coming to see me, and it's kind of comical because the mic kept cutting out on him.
Oh.
And then he'd get this like, come on, but I was impressed both with the promoter and with him that they did their best to deliver. And I do have to say it was still an amazing, an awesome show with actually the match of the night. A guy I really had not seen much before, Jeff Cobb, who was Matanza.
Right.
And he teamed with Gallo Tapado Jr. And Gallo Tapado Jr., for those who don't know, there was a wrestler years ago, Gallo Tapado, which means like the alpha rooster, like, you know, the rooster who's above all of the roosters, who gets all the little chicks. But Gallo Tapado was always kind of like, he was a talented wrestler, but kind of had a comedy edge where he would dance these spots around the heels and make funny noises, and the heels would get all embarrassed because they can't nail this, goofy wrestler. Right,
and matched up with Cobb, who everybody's talking about him on the independent circuit. Matt Mann, who I've had on. Are you familiar with Matt Mann?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was a guest when he did his podcast about 8 or 9 years back. Yes.
He's been on my show about 3 times now, and he can't stop talking about Jeff Cobb, and the times
he just ran into him at the parking lot. And we knew who he was, but we weren't like, hey, we're so and so. He just started just chatting with us and a few other people, just like almost like not aware that he's a big deal now.
He is, yeah.
And a very down-to-earth guy. But what I loved is, he is on the Triple Mania pay-per-view. But on this show, he hadn't worked a lot of Lucha. And so they teamed him with this guy, Gallo Tapado Jr. So here's this guy who looks like a classic, Olympian wrestler, and he's teaming with this silly, guy with a, funky rooster gimmick. But he played it off like it was natural, like he played it off like he's a serious wrestler, and who's kind of saying, I don't get my partner's trip here. Like, what's up with this guy? And they wrestled Los Luchas.
Gotcha.
And it was a comedy match, but it was a very technical comedy match.
Gotcha. That
great match. And Cobb took the pin clean in the middle of the ring.
Really?
And he just a really interesting guy. And it's interesting because I meet so many guys who, their goal is, WWE, and he's kind of like, I just want to see the world. I want to try to wrestle on every continent. I mean, he said he would love it if WWE worked out, but that wasn't his end all. His interest is more what's out there in the world. And in fact, Fredo asked how was the AAA show, and he goes, oh, it was good, but oh my God, the food in that city. Oh my God, and it's like the wrestling was secondary. He was more kind of interested in the locale.
Well, yeah, I mean, he seems like a guy that does want to see every continent, and that's refreshing.
Exactly. And it's like it made me want to talk to him more, not just about wrestling, but what other stuff he's interested in. It's he just seems like I found him to be a very fascinating guy. I want to learn more about him.
Got you. Well, it's nearing the end, and I have a question that my buddy Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria has texted that he wants to ask you, and it's as follows. My favorite wrestler of all time is 2 of them, Roddy Piper and Macho Man Randy Savage. Do you have any stories of either meeting them or seeing them wrestle in person?
I only met Piper once, but it's funny because when I meet a wrestler that I've always idolized and stuff like that, it's usually I just do an introduction, kind of, hi, how you doing, you know, and it's kind of cool to say I meet him, but the ones I end up having long conversations are just kind of happen accidentally because Buddy Roberts was at a Cauliflower Alley convention, and, you know, that is after he had the cancer, and he had the tracheotomy where you have the hole in the throat.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah. And I kind of thought he probably doesn't want to talk to some guy who remembers him as the Hollywood blonde, you know. So I just said, hey, how you doing? And we're drinking, and I brought up something that Mickey Doyle had told me years ago when Mickey Doyle was even kind of, you know, telling me about the business, and one of the things is Buddy Roberts and Harley Race came up, and then he said, oh, those two guys, Buddy Roberts, Harley Race, if you cannot have a good match with these guys, quit the business. And I told him that, and he just stopped and goes, Mickey Doyle said that about me? And I go, yeah, and he stops and says, wow. He says, coming from Mickey Doyle, that he says that just means so much to me. And I think it's that we ended up talking for like 90 minutes at least. And Piper, I met him. It was shortly after, it was about a year after my chemotherapy concluded. And I hadn't wrestled at all, and Paul Logan X, who was the promoter for Millennium Pro Wrestling, restarted his promotion after being inactive for, I think, 6 or 7 years. And he had Piper on the show, and they did a match where Logan wrestled the late Cincinnati Red, and Piper was, I can't remember if Piper was the referee or in Logan's corner or something like that. But what I remember is in the dressing room, everybody was unapologetically marking out and just going up and shaking his hand, talking to him, and he took time with everybody. A friend of Dan Farron and I, our friend Sophia, who she doesn't know the business like we do. I mean, she doesn't follow us hardcore, but ever since she was a little girl, she loved WWE, and Piper was like one of her favorite. I think Piper and Bret Hart were her favorites, and it was so cool to see her so starry-eyed. I mean, she was a gal in her 30s, and Piper was super nice to her. And I got my photo op. I got my picture with my Monkey PR mask.
Oh, I would love to see that photo. Oh my God!
I'll have to dig it up, and I'll forward it to you.
Oh man, you know what? Now I'm going to bother you every 96 to 108 hours. I will send you a Facebook post saying, "Where's the photo? Where's the photo?"
A lot of people wanted some Piper time, so I just wanted to. I just wanted to introduce myself and just, I just had like, I thought to myself, okay, one question you want to ask him, don't try to hog the time, because everybody, from fans to other wrestlers, just wanted a Piper moment.
Of course.
I'll never forget when I went to introduce myself, I didn't even think of saying this, but Dan Farron just said, Mr. Piper, this is my friend Kurt. He says, who's a cancer survivor, and I didn't even. I didn't even think of that. And he says, and Piper just looked at me, says you beat it, and I said, yes, sir, I beat it, and he actually hugged me and said, God bless you, and smiled, and and then I did just the standard line. I enjoyed your work, and then I said, hey, I want to know, what was it like working with Raul Mata? And he just says, Raul Mata, he says, that was one solid worker.
Wow.
Very good worker.
Well, you know, he's on Facebook. I made friends with him, but I haven't talked to him yet.
Yeah. I think he just kind of occasionally updates photos here and there online. It looks like his kids are more active on Facebook. What great shape he's in.
Yes. Oh, my God.
You know, I think I never sent him an email via Facebook. I might try it, but it looks like he's not very active on it. Just kind of has an account and occasionally puts a photo.
Right.
I never have met Raul Mata, and he is the one wrestler I would like to meet. Even if you didn't want to talk wrestling, I'd fly to Florida just to say you were my first wrestling hero.
You should. Vandal, life is so short. I mean, he
I know.
was...
I might do that sometime.
I could still hear Hank Renner going, "There's the model roll-up. Oh, my God, no one's ever done that before. 1, 2, 3.
I love that. I always loved Hank Renner, but he went even up one more in the cool factor for the Motorola. And
yes.
There's a photo. I don't know which magazine. Well, I have stacks of old Lucha magazines, but there's an early 70s magazine where they just have photos from the weekly Arena Coliseo card. And there's a photo of Raul Mata doing a body press on somebody.
Wow.
The height he got on that thing in that photo would make Mil Mascaras blush. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be motivated enough to write a full book, but if I was to write a wrestling book, I'd love to write one on all the journeymen who were great in their own way. People like Raul Mata, Mickey Doyle, Tony Rocco, Tim Talltree.
Oh, definitely. Even you have to say Jose Gonzalez, even though,
Yeah. I mean, some for good reasons, some for the wrong reasons. The ones who had a presence in the business. There's tons of people. Ken Lucas is another one that comes to mind.
Oh my God, yeah, he was in LaBelle's promotion. That's right. He came up here for one main event too, and fought for the U.S. title against somebody, if I remember right.
Yes, and I mean, there's so many people. I mean, I'd love Jack Armstrong, who. Because a lot of the journeymen I find to be some of the most interesting people, especially the ones who, as much as they love wrestling, knew when it was time to go on to something else. And
oh my God, yeah. I mean, if you watch Georgia Championship Wrestling, they had a stable of maybe 10 enhancement guys. Mike Jackson, the Mole King.
Yes, the king of Georgia enhancement guys.
Yeah, Dale Veazey.
What a talented worker.
Oh my God, yeah, Dale Veazey, George South. I could go on and on. And back real quick, because I know we're nearing the time you got to go. Mm-hmm. You really have to check out on the network that match and with Tommy Rich and
I do intend to find that, because I remember when that whole. I mean, that's when I started watching cable TV from time to time.
Yes,
TBS.
Me too.
I just remember that whole era. It was.
Oh my God, I got
really
it.
Fun time to be a wrestling fan.
Oh, yes. I have it on cassette. I have tons and tons of that air on cassette from Georgia Championship Wrestling. Literally tons of it. All on
cool.
cassette.
That's cool. Oh, man. Hang on to that, baby.
Oh, my God. Yes. And people forget, and I knew it. I didn't spread it or tell anybody, but the stipulation of that match is if Tommy Rich won, Ole Anderson would get to wrestle Paul Ellering, who was suspended in a cage above the ring, in a little cage.
Oh, that's awesome. You know what?
Tommy Rich wins.
If you have Ellering interviews from that time, my God, that guy was the most underrated interview. When he did his intelligent madman thing.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, when he wrestled Jerry Lawler, he was amazing in Memphis. He went, and people don't remember that about him. Oh, well, he just managed the Road Warriors. No, he had a career of his own, and now he's in NXT with these two big, huge gorilla-like guys, which is perfect for him. And that they say that's why the network got a hold of that match, because Paul gave him his copy.
Oh, no way. That's so cool. What I'll never forget is when Paul Ellering, when he did that run early in Georgia, how he'd get in the microphone and just do these just out there stream of consciousness interviews. And remember doing commentary with Gordon Soley.
Yes.
I can't remember who was wrestling, but Gordon Soley, I want to say he mentioned a good deed a wrestler did for somebody, like saved, and maybe one of the faces saved a jobber from jail or something. I can't remember exactly what it was.
I know what it is.
And then Paul Ellering says, yes, we should always remember such wonderful gestures. I must tell you, Mr. Soley, I was driving the other day, and I was at a stop sign, and I stopped because I saw a Boy Scout escorting, an old woman across the street, and I thought, oh my God, Paul Ellering should do, a gesture like that. How can I do as magnanimous a gesture as this honorable Boy Scout? And then what could I do that would be that genuine and loving? And so as they walked in front of my car, I did something beautiful. I blared my horn at them and told them to move. And it's like it's just the stuff he would come up with. And it was so funny because later when he was like with the Road Warriors, he was great, but he was just Paul Ellering. But I wish that character stayed around.
Oh my God! Well, let me refresh your memory. There was a great angle when King Kong Bundy was it was Jake the Snake Roberts, King Kong Bundy, and the Road Warriors, and I think one other person. There's my memory. It was with them, one other wrestler. And he outed King Kong Bundy and said Bundy's eating out of house and home backstage and blah, blah, blah. And it turned Bundy, just that one interview, turned Bundy into a good guy. And so the very next Omni card was King Kong Bundy and Tommy Rich or Stan Hansen or somebody against the Road Warriors, just based on that interview that Ellering did. Bundy didn't even have to say anything until later on in the show. What'd you say, and came out, and they called him Boom Boom Bundy in Atlanta.
Boom Boom Bundy, I love that. Oh, Triple B.
Yeah.
Triple B, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, hey, I'm kicking you off the show because you got to work tomorrow, and I want to thank you for being on. Because you said 45 minutes. And
thank you. Because if you don't kick me off, Elena will come in, grab me by the hair, and says, "You need your sleep."
Well, I'm so glad you had a great vacation and you shared it with your Facebook peeps, which I'm glad to be one of.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I'll tell you what. Ask you one favor, and this is a twofold thing. One, I want you to send me your picture that you want me to use for you, so I can put it up for the show on SoundCloud.com under DERFCAST and iTunes, and that will get the itch going for you to find the Roddy Piper of you and him in a mask, and you can send that later on.
I will do that.
Oh, I love you for it, man. Love you for it. Vandal, you're such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I, one of these days when I accumulate some hours, I love going up north to see my cousin Debbie, some old friends from high school.
I'm there.
And next time I do, I want us to meet up in person.
I will, and if you come into the city, I'll show you my shrine to Roddy. You can meet my two cats, and I love you, man. I swear to God, I really do. Every time I talk to you, I get a newfound energy. Afterwards, it's like, that was a great show, and life's good, and I want to thank you.
It's so fun talking to somebody who is as fascinated about, all these offbeat wrestlers, even in a sport as offbeat as wrestling.
Oh my God, thank you. Yes, and we didn't even talk about Titans of the Ring. We didn't even mention it until now.
Well, you know what? Let's do another cast soon.
Oh, my God, you and Mickey Doyle, and then, we could head off and do one. Maybe Mickey's heard of him. We could ask him.
Oh, yeah. I remember talking with him about it, and that was back in '84 when I didn't even realize what a huge mainstream juggernaut that was. And we joked about it being called LSD wrestling. And,
oh, it was great still. Well, listen, I'm kicking you out. Get the hell off the show, buddy.
Okay, I'm out here. I'm out of here, man.
Oh,
Go out of here.
Vandal, thank you so much. And we'll talk again soon, brother.
Okay, thank you for having me on again. You take care, Fred.
Thanks. And we'll meet up, and you'll come on again soon.
I look so forward to it.
Thanks. And, send me a picture and promote the show and say whatever you want about me, and that's good.
You got it.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you. Take care now.
Bye-bye. Well, that has been Vandal Drummond on DERFCAST number 48. I would like to thank Bob from Bob's Radio Cafeteria for supplying us with our question. And just remember, folks, life is short. Stand up to bullies. It's that easy. You can catch all past episodes of DERFCAST on iTunes under Comfortably Zoned Radio and SoundCloud.com. This has been a DERFCAST copyrighted production 2016. And remember one last time, stand up to bullies. It's that easy. The Dirt is back with another episode of DERFCAST. This week's surprise guest is inappropriate Earl Skakel. That's right. The co-host of the late Roddy Piper's Pit podcast. This is an interview I conducted with him earlier in the week. This kickback. If you have nothing to do for the next hour, enjoy it. And here you go. And remember, stand up to bullies. It's that easy. And here we go. My guest tonight is Earl Skakel. I've got to start over.
I don't mind.
My guest tonight on DERFCAST is Earl Skakel, Mr. Inappropriate Earl, one half of the late Roddy Piper's podcast. He added a really good, he added class to it even more than stand-up comic based in the L.A. area. If you're down there, catch his act. He's hilarious. I happened to see a set of his at, where were we that night? At the Comedy Store.
Yes.
So Earl, thank you for joining. I'm sorry to not let you say anything about yourself, but this man hosted, I think, 5 podcasts with Roddy before Roddy passed.
Yeah, about 5 or 6, and then he came on one episode of my own podcast, and the day he passed away, he was supposed to come over to my house to record another one. So,
that's right. That's what you were telling me the night we met at the Comedy Store. What did you think of that?
I actually called him at about 1 o'clock that Friday afternoon and said, "Hey, Roddy, I got your favorite water. I'll see you in about an hour. And then, the news reports started surfacing, and, so that was the way I found out.
Oh, man, I have a really small pool cleaning business, and I work for another guy during the off time, and I'm at one of his pools for the very first time. And he even warned me, he goes, this man's really picky. I don't want you doing this pool, but I can't make it, Fred. You have to do it. So, I go there for the first time. He comes out, and he's not saying anything, and he's standing there, and my phone rings, and it's my ex-girlfriend. And I go, wow, she never calls me. What's up? So I answer it, and she goes, are you sitting down? And I go, no, I'm working. And she goes, well, you better sit down. And I go, what? You want to get back together? And she goes, Fred, I'm being really serious. And I'm going, what's wrong? Is your mom okay? And she goes, my mom's fine. Roddy Piper passed. And I was dead silent, and I went, no! I yelled it, and I just took the pole that I was cleaning the pool with, I threw it on the ground, and walked right out, right to my car. And the guy yells at me, hey, where are you going? And I'm going, I'm leaving. And I just went to my truck, started it up, drove down the street, and just started crying. And I get a call about 10 minutes later from the guy I work for. Hey, what happened? And I told him, and he goes, I'll see you in 2 days. Take a day off. Because everybody who knows me knows, how much I love Roddy, after all these years. So that's what happened with me. And
it's, I think we're pretty affected by it. So,
yeah.
I just sat at my desk and cried for about 2 hours, and then, just tried to comprehend what I didn't want to believe it was true. People kept calling me, and
oh man, same here.
He didn't die. He's on his way over to do a podcast.
When you told me that at the memorial, because you were telling a couple people, and I was standing there listening, I felt so bad for you because sure it hit home with me, but geez, it might make you feel a little bit better. I got a call later on that night, and about an hour after he died, a baby was born to one of Roddy's fans who I talk to all the time, to his son, and he named the middle name of his son Roddy.
Right. He meant a lot to all kinds of people, and a lot of people loved him.
Oh my God, the internet's still. Rest in peace, Dusty Rhodes died. The internet. Had a bunch of Dusty stuff for, a week, and then it died out. There's still stuff being posted all the time, at least on my wall by people, and, about Roddy. It's just amazing. People who didn't even know that much about him being a wrestler for as long as he wrestled were posting things. I just knew him from They Live,
Yeah, he wasn't just a wrestler, a very successful actor, and,
oh, hell yeah.
Just beloved by not just wrestling fans, but UFC fans, acting fans. He was so big that, people who didn't even watch wrestling or like wrestling know who he is. So.
You hit it right on the head. More people know who he is than knew who Dusty Rhodes was. And I think maybe he's on the same par as Hogan, but that people know who he is,
Roddy was on such a, big fame level. He was like the group Kiss. Even people who don't like Kiss or, as a band can tell you Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter.
Right, exactly.
And the same thing with Roddy. It's like, that's the guy who fought Hulk Hogan in the first WrestleMania, or Mr. T, or Cyndi Lauper.
Right,
so,
right. Well, I read a couple times over the years, and then it's been removed from the internet by most likely Vince, that they had Jimmy Snuka was going to be the bad guy against Hogan. And once Vince really started paying attention to Roddy, or looking at the tapes from the NWA where he was already a star. He was already polished. He was already perfect when Vince got him. Vince decided to have him fight Hogan. It was natural, but it would have been interesting to see Snuka as a bad guy, but they killed him off by having Morocco kick out of his superfly